I just want to keep to the schedule for the reasons discussed already. Hope you got a coffee, hope you got a water, hope you got whatever you need and you're settling in, because we've got some good sessions coming up. We've got 2 sessions, starting with John Fox from Enviromall. Andrea spoke about it in her presentation, the importance of packaging. It seems ludicrous to travel the hard route of going organic, certified, and if you're not there yet, natural at least, and doing all the right practices, whether you're farming and considerations around pesticides and all of that, all the way through the production process to packaged goods, to go through all of that and let yourself down in the final mile by not using sustainable packaging. So here to shed some more light on that, about their business and some tips and advice around packaging and sustainability, I'd like to welcome John. First time on the event, we're all looking very much to hearing what you have to say. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me. As Marcus said in the opening words, this is definitely the new norm. I've had lots of online meetings, but this is the first time that I'm actually giving a presentation online. And so sitting at my dining room table, and I must just warn you, today is recycling collection day, which I suppose is quite appropriate for this event. So there might be a short interruption when the dogs go barking. Please excuse me if that does happen. I'd like to begin by actually just painting a little bit of a scenario before we actually get into the packaging situation. And I'm just wondering if any of you know just how old the Earth is. Well, the Earth is estimated to be 4.56 billion years old. Humans have only been around for an estimated 2.65 million years. Not sure who was recording it, but that's how long that they estimate that we've been around for. And about, 0.06% of the time that the Earth has been around, man has been around. But most of the time, the first 99.93% of that time, we actually did very, very little other than going around and clubbing things. But then man developed. And what happened in the last sort of 10,000 years, we learned to farm. And in the last 200 years, we learned to farm in new and innovative ways. So that's about there's 5 noughts there, 0.004% of the history of the Earth. And in that short space of time, we've done more damage to our planet than the billions of years that we've actually been around. So I just wanted to set that as a background, just to get you thinking a little bit. But we actually not yet to talk about that. We're yet to talk about packaging. And my statement is to say that packaging is wasteful and it's a threat to the environment. Well, the truth is that that's actually a myth. Without packaging, we would have a lot of food wastage. Packaging actually protects our food against spoilage. It protects it against physical damage. It keeps the moisture in when you need the moisture to be kept in, and it also keeps the moisture out when you need the moisture to be kept out. Studies have been conducted where it shows that up to 30 or 40%, depends on the area that you're in, of agricultural products are not arriving at the consumer in a fit state, fit to be consumed. And that's largely because of packaging. Without the right packaging, it's not going to happen. So what is it then about packaging? We need to actually make the right decision with packaging. And when I was preparing for this talk, there was 3 key areas that I identified that I felt were really important when it comes to packaging. And of those areas, the first one is the circular economy. And I'll go into more detail a little bit later. The second one is the design. So when you're designing a product, you need to design for recyclability. And the third one is make sure that you're choosing the most sustainable option. So starting with the first one, what do we mean by a circular economy? So in the past, you've all heard of the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Well, yeah, we've got 6 R's now, no longer the 3 R's. The problem with man and society of today is that we've always had a linear economy. In other words, you manufacture something, you use it, and you send it off to landfill. Sometimes it doesn't even get as far as landfill. It ends up either in the countryside, or it lands up in our rivers or our seas. You've all heard about the great garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. You've seen the turtle with a straw up its nose. And that's the kind of thing that we need to be avoiding. So if you look at the slide, this is a slide that I borrowed from the CSIR. We're working on a project together to make packaging more of a circular economy. And if you have a look at the way that it works, the first thing we should be doing, the first R and the most important of the R, is to actually rethink and to actually reduce the amount of packaging that we use. You save a lot just simply by doing that. Then we need to look at redesigning. I mean, how many times have you been to a supermarket and you buy yourself, perhaps it's a piece of meat, that meat is wrapped in a nice vacuum packed thing, it's then got a sleeve around it. They then put it in a polystyrene tray, and then they wrap it with cling wrap on top of that, and then they might still go and stick a little label on it. I mean, you can reduce that packaging by a lot. And obviously the next one we need to think about is reusing. Try and design your packaging for reusing. We've been working with one of the coffee suppliers, and like Warren Coffee is one of my favorites. I've got to have my couple of cups in the morning before I get going. But they're designing their packaging to be reusable. But not only is it reusable, it's actually attractive in such a way that people will want to use it. And then repair and remanufacture, that's the next R. So let's look at stuff that we can repair. In the old days, things used to last forever and it would be repaired and they'd carry on. Nowadays, things are designed to last the length of their warranty and then it's gone. And then recycle. So products need to be designed in such a way as they can actually be recycled. So just because something says it's recyclable doesn't mean it will be recycled. And I'll cover that a little bit more further on as well. And the last R in the circular economy is recover. So there's a lot of energy lying in our landfills. There's gas that can be harvested. We need to actually start doing that because the way it is at the moment, our landfills are filling up so fast. Most of the landfills in Cape Town are completely full, and the rest of them have got a couple of years to go. So we're running out of landfill space very, very quickly. So that's the first part. The second part is in design. So when we design something, we need to design it with recycling in mind. So if you have a look at that website that I've put up there, there's an organization called Packaging SA. Go to the website whenever you're looking at design. They've got a very, very comprehensive manual there. If I remember correctly, it's about 80 pages long, but it's very nicely, cleverly designed to cover all aspects of packaging. So it's got your plastics, it's got glass, it's got paper, it's got everything. And it explains to you that when you're designing your product, you need to design it with recycling in mind. So very often what happens is you've got your marketing department, you've got your design department, you've got your procurement department, and all three of them, doesn't matter how many departments, they've all got different agendas. They need to be sitting down as a team so that when you start doing your designing, you actually design it together. You design it with this recycling in mind. The other important thing about recycling is that recycling creates jobs. There's about 80,000 jobs are created simply because of recycling. A lot of materials can be recycled infinitely, stuff like glass and metal. Paper, on the other hand, not so much, 5 to 7 times. So as it gets more and more recycled, those little fibers become shorter and shorter. And when you're recycling it, it just becomes sludge. But I'd rather recycle it than use virgin fibers, because that's the other important thing. about recycling is that your recycled products have a considerably lower carbon footprint. So our recycling obviously saves our resources that were destined for landfills. And as I explained to you earlier on, our landfills are filling up, and we need to divert everything from our landfills as soon as possible and as much as we can. And so you've all heard of plastic waste. By designing correctly, we're going to divert a lot of that plastic waste. We're also going to have a lot less microplastics ending up in our food stream, and so that's what's really, really important. What I'd like to also mention this, and this comes in with the designing thing. There's an organization called OPRL, which stands for Unpack Recycling Logo. And what they're doing, you've seen before all the various recycling logos. Everyone designs a little green circular arrow. Normally what it is, it might have a little bit of a tree in it, or a little bit of a plant in it. They'll have all kinds of logos, but the more of them that are out there, the more confusing it becomes to the consumer. So what we're doing there, and we're working with all the big retailers, with all the brand owners, everybody who's involved in creating packaging in some way, to have a uniform standard for recycling labels. So you'll see in this one, it'll say the sleeve, for example, is made of cardboard and it's widely recycled. Certain products are not so widely recycled. So in this case, the tray, you'd have to check with your local recycling. And the other option would be the film, to say that this particular plastic is not currently recycled. And this gives the consumer an opportunity, when they're looking at their purchase, to immediately know what they can do with it, and maybe even make a decision to rather pick up the product next to it because it can be recycled. So this forms also part of the design, so that when you are designing, just go and look on the OPRL website and make sure that you put in the correct recycling logo on it. And make sure you're avoiding greenwashing by putting recycling logos on something that's not actually recyclable. Yeah, we definitely need to get away from the greenwashing of having the wrong labels on. That again is something that I'm going to cover a little bit further on. We just need to remember that simply because something says it's recyclable doesn't mean it always is recyclable. There's so many factors that, like the weight of the product, for example, they're making products thinner and thinner, but the thinner the product becomes, the less attractive it is for the recyclers. If you can imagine, that poor recycler has to bend down and pick up a plastic PET bottle, for example. Now that that bottle's become thinner, it's about 30% thinner than what it used to be, he's now got to bend down more times, and it's not so attractive to him anymore. There's things like separating different materials. So if you design something that's got 3 or 4 different materials, can they be separated? If they can't be separated, it's not attractive for recycling. So if you've ever been to a recycling site where the municipality will pick up your recycling, will take it to a MRF, and there they sit and they sort through all these products, but you've got this big conveyor belt moving at a pace, and the sorters actually look and have got to be very quick and pick up the product. And they haven't got time to separate stuff. They haven't got time to pick up little pieces of paper or little pieces of plastic. So that just carries on and goes straight to landfill. The other thing that we need to look at is our food waste. So there's considerably more food waste than packaging waste that is going to landfill. So when we're doing that design, we need to design the pack a lot more cleverer to avoid that food waste and that contamination. So for example, design the pack with a wider neck, which means you can get in and you can get all the product out. I've got a jar of mayonnaise, it's a plastic jar, in the fridge. That mayonnaise has got ribs going around the inside of the bottle. I think the ribs are there to add strength because they've made the bottle thinner and thinner to save on material. The problem is I can't get that mayonnaise out. I've taken a knife, I've taken teaspoons. No matter what implement I use, I just cannot get in to get all the material out there. So that goes to waste, and that becomes food waste. I mean, the CSR determined that 10 million tons of food is wasted annually. That's 30% of local agriculture at a cost of 61 billion rand. That's enough food for every starving person that we've got in this country to comfortably feed everybody. So we've got to be very careful about when we're designing products. Inverted packs, you've seen the tomato sauce where it's now upside down. I loved it. So much easier to get the product out. And I've actually selected a brand based on its packaging. You also get additives that can be put on to make the surface smoother, to make it all the product come out. I wish somebody would design a toothpaste tube that you can get that last little bit out. I mean, there's a lot of money in that. The next thing I want to talk about is paper. Paper is 100% recyclable, but when we design it, what do? We want it to look pretty. We want it to look nice. So what do? We go and we put heavy foils on it. Suddenly it's not recyclable. Or we put glues on, you get your stick-it notes and all that. We cover it with glue. Suddenly it's not attractive to recyclers anymore. We put plastic protective layers on it. So you take your plastic bag, your paper bag, and you put a protective layer on the inside so the grease and everything doesn't go through, and suddenly it's not recyclable anymore. So a couple of years ago, there's a major, we won't mention the names, but it's a major fast food chicken restaurant, and they had their takeaway bags, which was paper with a plastic layer on the inside, and on the back was printed environmentally friendly statements and please recycle me, when we all know it can't be recycled. And I contacted them and they were adamant it could be done. And then I contacted the company that was actually manufacturing the bags. And I said to him, how can you print that on the bag? You know it can't be done. And his exact words, I wish I'd recorded, well, that's what the customer wants. So there's unscrupulous manufacturers out there that are prepared to print anything on the packaging. The other thing in your design you need to look at is ink coverage. Try and avoid excessive ink coverage. That makes the grade of the paper a lot less attractive for recycling. And where possible, avoid your adhesives, especially your hot glue, hot melt adhesives, and those kind of silicone adhesives, because they're not recyclable. Your what's what I'm looking for? Your water-based adhesives, they're fine. They don't damage the paper, and it's much easier to recycle. And then look for FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council, because if you're using paper that FSC approved, then you know it's coming from sustainably managed forests. The workers are being treated in an ethical manner. The forests are being planted at a rate much higher than what they're being harvested. The other thing you need to try and avoid, and sometimes unfortunately it's not possible, but look for wet strength additives. Try and avoid those. So very often potato bags, for example, they've got a wet strength additive. And when a recycler sees one of those paper bags, they just avoid it completely. Other things that have got additives and coverage are things like your cement bags and your dog food bags. When I was at that visit that I paid to the sorting site where they were sorting all the recycles, one of the products that I saw were pet food bags that just went straight from the conveyor belt to landfill. So we need to we need to be very careful. If you read through that manual when you're designing your products, you'll know these things. You'll know what to avoid. You'll know what can be put together to make your pack much more recyclable. I just want to show you a short video clip here, just to show you that paper can actually do a really good job. It can give you the strength it needs. It can outperform other products just by clever design. I really wish he hadn't have dropped that bottle right at the end. I would have believed him if he'd have said that it had protected the bottle. Such a waste. But that ticks all the boxes. It shows you that packaging protects. It's been designed for recyclable. It's easy to recycle. Does all the jobs. The next question, and now we're going to move on to the sustainability section. I want to ask you a question. Biodegradable, is it good or bad? I don't know if you'd like to maybe just make a little comment in the chat box there, say yes, or Y for yes, or N for no. Maybe just think about it and tell me what you think. If this wasn't a virtual meeting, I'd have everybody putting up their hands to say who agrees that biodegradable is good. But it's the new norm now, so we have to do it slightly differently. Well, the truth is, biodegradable is not a good thing. And the reason for that is biodegradable simply means that a product will break down within a certain time frame. It doesn't mean that it's good for the earth. It doesn't mean that you can put it back into the soil as compost. It just simply means it's going to break down. Everything breaks down eventually. I mean, some plastics will take hundreds or maybe even thousands of years. So biodegradable simply means something will break down. You get something called oxy-biodegradable, where they put an additive into the plastic, and that additive makes that plastic break down. The problem with that is twofold. First of all, the recyclers do not want to touch it, and it's quite understandable because they take that plastic and they recycle it, for example, into PVC piping, which goes underground and has to be guaranteed for a certain number of years. And then you don't know how long that's going to last because you don't know how much of this additive is actually in it. The second problem is that it creates a lot of microplastics. So now we're getting microplastics into our food stream, getting into our bodies and cause all sorts of problems. So what is good then? Compostable, okay? Something that is compostable is good. So if it's compostable, it'll be both biodegradable and good for the earth. So if the product breaks down, you can actually put it into the soil and it will not harm the plants or the environment. So be careful of biodegradable. If somebody says something is biodegradable, check and see if it's compostable as well, because then it's okay. A lot of greenwashing out there where people tell you their product is biodegradable. I see it on a regular basis. I'd like to introduce you to a new organization. It was formed actually during lockdown, called COPCO, which stands for the Compostable Plastics Council. We're now including compostable packaging in this. So where the problems come in is that people import products, bring in raw material to manufacture products locally, and everybody's got their own logo. So there's an American standard, there's a European standard, there's Japanese standards, there's Chinese standard, Australian standard. They're all much of a muchness and they all do the right thing. But you can imagine when you walk into the supermarket and there's all these different products on there and they've all got different logos, the poor consumer doesn't know what's happening. And what we decided is we need to have one logo for compostability. So South Africa currently doesn't have a compostable standard. We are working on one with SANS and hopefully that will be available soon. So COPCO is actively involved in that. So what the process is here, and we're also working with all the retailers, all the major retailers and brand owners, and it looks like all of them are going to endorse it as well. So the product will come in, it'll be verified as being compostable. We will then send it to an independent auditor, and they will then audit it to verify that that product actually deserves to have that label, that it's not been faked. I've actually had in the past fraudulent labels come across my desk. And then they will authorize the use of the compostable logo. We're doing one step further that doesn't happen overseas, is we will then send it for a field test. There's an organization in South Africa called ORASA, and ORASA stands for the Organic Recycling Association, and they will actually do a physical test on the product to make sure that it breaks down the way that it's supposed to. The other thing that COPCO is currently doing is we're setting up an EPR system. So we will represent compostable packaging for extended producer responsibility. And I'm not sure if everyone is aware of what that is, but all brand owners and companies, manufacturers and importers had to be legitimately set up with a PRO by the 5th of November. That's this November past. So we're talking about sustainability now. What I'm going to do is show you just a couple of options, packaging options that are more sustainable compared to their previous counterparts. The first one that I want to discuss is something called Earthpack. Earthpack is actually a paper product that can completely replace products like your PET films or your polystyrene containers. It's manufactured from that FSC paper that I was referring to. It's got excellent barrier properties. In other words, you can put greasy foods in there and you don't have to worry about it leaking. It's got no plastic coatings on it, which means it's both biodegradable and compostable. So this product is literally one of the best products that I've come across. It's a fairly new product. You can put it in the oven, you can put it in the freezer, and quite safely take it from there, put it on the table, let the people eat it, and know that you're getting no harmful toxics or anything like that. Another option that we could look at is compostable flower pouches. I mean, how often have we been to the supermarket? You go and buy these beautiful flowers, and what do? They wrap it in plastic. It's one of the things that really gets to me, all these flowers wrapped in plastic. You go to the supermarket and they still give you a plastic bag to put in on top of it all. This material that we're looking at, it's a cellulose-based film. It's 100% compostable. It's 100% plastic-free. Now you can transport your flowers without wilting. And what I do is when I cut the little ends off, I leave that paper on the countertop, and when we're making dinner or vegetable peels and things, I wrap it in that paper and I throw it in my compost heap. And when you look at it a couple of months later, it is completely gone. So the main thing about that is that it's 100% compostable. You're avoiding the plastic. Another product, Fairly new on the market as well as something called earthtouch, and earthtouch is just a brand name, but it's the principle behind it is that this pouch is 100% plastic free. It's sustainable, so it's made from a renewable resource, the paper being FSC certified, but you can also recycle this as part of the paper stream. It's got your grease and moisture resistant barriers. So this bag would have been perfect for that takeaway chicken that I was talking about earlier. You'd be able to throw it on your compost heap or recycle it as paper if it wasn't too contaminated. So this is a very environmentally friendly solution that you can use not only for dry foods, but you can use it for moist foods as well. And it's got barrier properties. So the problem with paper in the past is that it didn't have barrier properties, meaning oxygen would get in or grease would get out and various things like that. Now we can do it with paper without taking paper away from being recyclable. Sea pollution. This is one of the things that really gets to me. Each year, 640,000 tons of netting is lost in the sea. And we don't even know how many mammals, fish, birds are being trapped in these nets. Now with bioplastics, we can actually manufacture those nets that are being lost every year to actually break down within a certain time frame. There is a company I know is currently working on manufacturing these nets locally, which means we'll be able to export it and save it. I mean, our fishing resources at the moment are really not looking good. We're catching 2.5% more than what our available resources will be.
John, just to give you a heads up, we're just shy of 10 minutes to go.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I will speed it up slightly. So the plastics age, I'm not going to go into too much detail on, but those bags floating in there look very much like the staple diet of a turtle, namely a jellyfish. And turtles have been around for 200 million years, which means they probably going to be wiped out by plastic. 35% of the turtles that are washed up on our shores actually died from plastic ingestion. There's a material called PLA, which stands for polylactic acid. PLA can be manufactured from sugarcane. We've got an excess of sugar. We've been told by everyone not to consume so much sugar. It's not good for our health. Government is working on ways to reduce our consumption. So one of the best ways to do it would be to actually manufacture these products from our excess sugar. There's currently a worldwide shortage of PLA, which means we can start exporting it. Polystyrene. Polystyrene, we need to try and avoid. In 2011, the US government actually added styrene as a known carcinogen. The Americans have actually, there was a test done in 2011, and 100% of Americans had styrene stored in their body fat. What can we replace it with? The gas. The gas is made from the sugarcane waste. So it's a product that would have been a waste product anyway, but it's 100% compostable. It's freezer safe, it's oven safe, it's got no plastic in it. Meat trays, perfectly easy to make out of bagasse. You can also get your absorbent pads can be made from bagasse. It's 100% compostable. There's no plastic in it. It can be recycled in the paper stream. There's no adhesives. And now finally, a compostable cling film. I actually researched it for this talk, and apparently 300 million tons of cling film is used every single year. We're literally wrapping our earth in plastic. So now you can have a compostable meat tray with a compostable absorbent pad and wrapped in a cling film that's compostable as well. You can get compostable cellulose forms. Yeah, I've actually got one in my hand. Probably the only drawback is that some people don't like the noise. But for me, I actually like the noise because you're actually advertising the fact that you're using a sustainably sourced product. Completely compostable. It can be recycled with your carton board as well. It's food safe. Very important is that it'll actually break down in water. So you take your food waste, your vegetable peelings, you wrap it in there, you put it on the compost heap, and it all disappears naturally as a recycled product. Coffee, one of my favorites. Did you know that over 225 billion cups of coffee is being drunk a day? Coffee is the second biggest traded commodity next to oil. We should be carrying our own coffee cups around with us, but we don't. The problem with the coffee bag is not one coffee bag has ever been recycled, as far as I'm aware. And the reason for that is coffee bags can't be recycled. It's a lamination with 3 different properties to give it the barrier it needs to protect that coffee. So you cannot separate those. So if you get 142 cups out of a 1 kilogram bag, that's if you're making a single shot coffee, that works out to over 15 million bags on a single day of coffee bags. I mean, it's going to take a year and you'll wrap the earth completely in coffee bags. So what's the solution? High barrier paper. This high barrier paper will protect the coffee. It will keep those flavors of the coffee in. It will keep the grease from the coffee beans in, but it'll keep those flavors that you don't want the coffee beans absorbing out. It's available. It's a solution that's easy there. As well as your coffee cups and lids. This coffee cup that you're looking at there is made from bamboo, so it's a renewable resource. Now, normally your coffee cup has got a plastic lining on it. Then they brought out coffee with a plant-based lining, which made it compostable. So the plastic lining cup wasn't recyclable, but the plant-based one was compostable. They've now got one with an aqueous coating on, which means it can be composted and it can be recycled in the normal paper stream. Your lids can also be made out of that bagasse that I showed you earlier on, or out of paper. Personally, I don't enjoy drinking my coffee with a lid, but sometimes you need to put a lid on when you're transporting it to your colleagues or whatever. But drink it without a lid and you'll see the flavor and the taste sensation is just so much more when you can smell the coffee that you're drinking. There's a new, Nestle has changed their packaging on their Smarties to a high barrier paper. So chocolate in the past had to have a metallized film. So you'd have metallized film laminate to a plastic, meaning it can't be recycled. Now Smarties are doing this. You've got a multi-layer, and they've taken 250 million packs of metallized unrecyclable film off the market and now replacing it with this high barrier paper. Finally, just to give you an idea of how unbalanced things are in the industry, the amount that we need to eliminate starvation and malnutrition in the whole world is estimated at $19.25 billion. The amount that America spends on waste loss programs is $35 billion. So we're actually spending double the amount of money on weight loss that we need to eliminate starvation and malnutrition. So on the one hand, you've got half the population that's malnourished and looking for food. And on the other hand, you've got these people that are obese. But it's not all in doom and gloom. We've got this organic talk shop, we've got fair trade, we've got lots of progress coming from a lot of people that are out there that are doing good. And if we can start now turning the tide, I honestly believe that we've got a better future for everybody out there. Thanks, Warren. Thanks to everybody else who is able to listen.
Thank you, John. That was a really informative talk. Some great value there. I think I think it's opened certainly my eyes, and hopefully all those in the audience, the suppliers that are using packaged goods. And I know we've got some retailers in the audience. The food lovers guys are there. Pick and Pay's in the audience. I hope you guys are all listening into this talk, because it's a no-brainer. Some of those stats that you threw out there are really, eye-opening in terms of the amount of cling film and the like. So thanks, John, very much for an informative talk. And leave that slide on. I think it's important. I want you to get some value out of this as well. Guys, take those details down and get in touch with John and let him help you in your businesses in terms of your packaging journey and how to think about it and how to be more strategic in the decisions you make in that regard. Quick question from the audience, John. How many times can a plastic product be recycled?
Warren, it depends on the actual plastic product itself, but the polymers do tend to weaken or shorten as you recycle. Depends on the product, but it's about 5 to 7 times.
Okay, 5 to 7. I've just got a question for myself. When it comes to packaging price, if you're talking compostable versus non, what are we talking about there? Is it far more expensive? Is it cheaper? Is it like for like?
Again, it's product specific. A lot of cases, if you're comparing the bagasse tray to a polystyrene tray, it's a lot more expensive. Probably, I would say 2 to 3 times the price. But then you are looking at a few cents per product. So if you're going for a product like a coffee bag, for example, will be more expensive, but you're paying, what do you pay, 80, 90 Rand for a 500 gram coffee. So you can absorb a few extra cents into a product like that. Those coffee cups that I showed you is marginally more expensive, maybe 10% more expensive. So you're looking at maybe 20 cents on a cup of coffee that you're paying 30 Rand for.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, overall, these products are more expensive, but some of them are marginal where others are 2 to 3 times the price. Got you.
Well, thanks again. I just want to reiterate a couple websites and names there. COPCO as the Compostable Plastics Council. I think it's important to go see what they're doing. And the packagingsa.co.za, the guide that you spoke of, I think is a great resource. So just resharing those details. Guys, John's details on screen there. Please get in touch and see what changes you can make in your businesses, because it's not, maybe it's 20 cents more, but it's not about today and tomorrow. This is really a bigger picture we're trying to address. John, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. Keep on.
Ciao.